before the dawn, building futures all day long, turning sparks into burning light. We keep the world alive tonight. With a heartbeat, the rhythm, the rise, Maxivas, the wind beneath our skies. Entrepreneur support systems call, lifting small dreams to stand tall. With passion and drive, we never rest. We never rest.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Support Podcast. I'm Ansel Whitmore, joined by Lydia Lynn. We're here to provide practical systems thinking for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and small business leaders who want clarity without the noise.
Today, we're addressing something that quietly controls most founders' lives but rarely gets examined directly: urgency. Not the kind that comes from genuine deadlines, but the manufactured kind that fills every gap where systems should exist.
If you've ever ended a week exhausted but unclear about what you actually accomplished, or if responding to messages has become your primary job description, this conversation will matter to you.
Let's start with a question most founders never ask themselves. How much of what felt urgent this week was actually important?
That distinction is everything. Urgent means it demands immediate attention. Important means it advances meaningful outcomes. These overlap far less often than we assume. I'd estimate that in most small businesses operating without systems, maybe 20% of urgent work is genuinely important.
So where does the other 80% come from?
It comes from structural absence. When you don't have defined priorities, every request arrives with equal weight. When you don't have intake protocols, every message interrupts immediately. When you don't have decision criteria, every choice feels equally critical. The business creates urgency because there's no architecture to contain it.
And here's what makes this dangerous. Urgency feels like responsibility. Responding quickly feels like good leadership. Being available feels like customer service. These associations get reinforced early in business when quick responses genuinely matter for survival. But what works at startup scale becomes destructive at operational scale.
Exactly. The founder who built the business by being hyper-responsive now finds themselves trapped by that same behavior. They've trained clients to expect instant replies, trained employees to escalate everything, and trained themselves to believe that constant availability equals commitment.
And the cost shows up in two places. First, in judgment quality. Decisions made under pressure are consistently worse than decisions made with reflection. The urgent environment doesn't just feel chaotic, it produces inferior outcomes.
Second, it shows up in what I call operational drift. The business stays busy but stops progressing, because when you're only responding to what's in front of you, you're never building what needs to exist tomorrow. Strategy disappears. The founder becomes a sophisticated dispatcher, not a leader.
Which brings us to the real question. How do you escape this pattern once you're inside it?
Systems function as filters that decide what reaches you and when. Let me give you a concrete example. Most small businesses treat customer messages as urgent by default. Every email triggers a notification. Every text demands a response. The founder's attention gets pulled in a dozen directions before noon.
What would a system look like?
First, you establish response protocols. Customer inquiries get acknowledged within 4 hours and resolved within 24 hours. That's the standard, published clearly. Then you batch message responses into 3 daily windows: morning, midday, and end of day. Your phone stops notifying you between those windows.
And what happens? Do customers express unease?
The opposite. Satisfaction typically increases because expectations are clear and consistently met. What customers actually hate is unpredictability. Sometimes you reply in 5 minutes, sometimes 5 hours. The system removes that variance. But here's what matters for the founder. You've just reclaimed 4 to 6 hours of uninterrupted focus daily.
That's not about working less, it's about protecting judgment quality.
Correct. Now let's talk about internal urgency, employee requests, vendor issues, and operational decisions. Same principle, different application. You establish decision-making protocols. Some decisions require real-time response, customer emergencies, safety issues, and critical system failures. These get through immediately.
But most decisions aren't in that category.
Right. Everything else flows into structured review points. Weekly priorities get set Sunday evening or Monday morning and remain fixed unless something genuinely exceptional occurs. Operational questions get batched into a daily team sync, 15 minutes, same time. Finance decisions wait for the weekly finance review.
What I appreciate about this is that it's not about being less available to your team. It's about creating predictable availability. Your team knows exactly when they'll have your attention, so they stop interrupting randomly. And because they know that window exists, they come prepared.
The pattern I see is that systems reduce urgency not by eliminating work, but by sequencing it properly. When things have their place and time, pressure dissipates. The same amount of work feels manageable instead of overwhelming because it arrives with structure instead of chaos.
We should address something that doesn't get discussed enough in business content: how urgency follows founders home.
This is where the real damage accumulates. When your business runs on constant urgency, you cannot mentally disengage. Even during family dinner, part of your attention monitors for the next fire. Weekends feel temporary. Rest feels conditional. You're physically present, but mentally elsewhere.
And this affects relationships in ways that compound slowly. Your partner learns to not expect full attention. Your children adapt to partial presence. These adaptations happen silently, but they create distance that becomes difficult to reverse.
What's particularly painful is that this contradicts why most people choose entrepreneurship. They want control over their time, they want to build something meaningful, and they want freedom. But without systems, entrepreneurship delivers the opposite. You have less control than an employee because you can never truly leave.
Systems restore that boundary, but not through willpower. The structure itself creates the separation. When business operations run on protocols rather than your constant vigilance, your attention becomes available for other domains. Protected time for family is actually protected because work has contained hours.
I've watched this transformation repeatedly. The founder implements intake systems, decision protocols, and priority frameworks. Within 2 to 3 weeks, their family notices the difference before they mention it. Why? Because presence returns. The quality of attention changes. Rest becomes restorative instead of anxious.
And this isn't soft thinking. This directly affects business performance. A founder who sleeps properly makes better decisions. A founder with restored relationships has emotional stability that shows up in leadership. A founder who isn't chronically depleted has energy for strategic thinking instead of just operational survival.
The business case for protecting personal life is actually stronger than the personal case. Sustainable performance requires a sustainable structure. You cannot build something significant while consuming yourself as fuel.
Let's give people something concrete to implement. If someone recognizes this pattern in their business, where should they start?
Start with an urgency audit. For 1 week, track every time something feels urgent. Write down what it was, why it felt urgent, and whether it actually required immediate action. At the end of the week, you'll likely find that 70 to 80% of urgent items could have waited without consequence.
That awareness alone begins to shift the pattern.
Next, establish 3 foundational systems. First, weekly priority setting. Every Sunday evening or Monday morning, define your 3 priorities for the week. These are the outcomes that matter. Everything else is secondary.
What's the second?
Communication protocols. Define response timeframes for different communication types. Customer inquiries, 4-hour acknowledgement, 24-hour resolution. Team questions, answered during daily sync or end-of-day batch. Vendor communications, reviewed during scheduled admin time. Then publish these standards so expectations are clear.
And third,
Protected focus blocks. Minimum 2 hours daily where you do not check messages, do not take calls, and do not allow interruptions except for genuine emergencies. This is where strategic work happens, the work that builds rather than just maintains.
The resistance people feel toward this usually comes from fear. What if something critical happens during those 2 hours?
Define critical explicitly. Customer emergency, safety issue, system failure. For everything else, 2 hours can wait. And here's what actually happens. Once your team and clients understand the pattern, they adapt. Critical items still get through. Everything else learns to wait. And the quality of work you produce during protected time more than compensates for the delayed responses.
We've covered a lot, but the core insight is simple. Urgency is not evidence of importance. Most pressure you experience is created by missing systems, not real deadlines.
When you implement structure, urgency loses its authority. You reclaim judgment, presence, and the capacity to build rather than just respond. This isn't about working less, it's about protecting what matters from what merely insists.
If this resonated, we encourage deeper engagement. Weekly podcasts, daily reflections, and continued insights are available through Insight Newsletter at patreon.com/CEO Bulletin Biz Central BGSI.
Additional implementation resources and frameworks available at maxivera.online. Thank you for your attention. This system remains available to those ready to build with clarity instead of pressure. Until next time.
Dreamers up before the dawn, building futures all day long, turning sparks into burning light. We keep the world alive tonight. With a heartbeat, the rhythm, the rise, Maxiva's the wind beneath our skies. Entrepreneurs support systems call, lifting small dreams to stand tall. With passion and